it's Lisa. I'm continuing on with Mystical March. I have these photos, my husband holding an art sculpture that he bought at an art gallery in Asheville a few months ago, and I was really surprised about this because he never buys anything for the house or anything like this. I mean, he does everything related to his pinball machines. That's his area of interest. He might once in a blue moon buy a book, but mostly he gets them at the library. He's very, very frugal, and he doesn't really like a lot of things. So I was just amazed that he bought this, but he loves it, and it's one of those where you turn it over and the sand drops down in different patterns, and it's just really beautiful, and we've enjoyed the different patterns, and I captured some pictures of one while it was building a design. So I've got some photos that I want to scrap, and I thought they would look really good on this paper that I did in one of my other videos, and I'll share a link with that here, and I'll also share a link with it at the end. So if you want to wait till you get through this and then pick up this video on misting. What I used to create this background is this Heidi Swap stencil, Sunburst stencil, and it's now been pretty well used with lots of paint and inks kind of built up on there. And then I also used this stencil from Crafter's Workshop to add some more interest to the design. It's a piece of blue cardstock, and the step-by-step for how to do that is in the other video. It uses these particular mists. So now that I have this background, I think it looks really good with the pictures. One feature, though, of this stencil is kind of by necessity. It has a border around it to sort of hold everything together, and that means that you have about 1/4 of an inch all the way around that's you don't have a design going all the way to that edge. You got a little bit. I've got a little bit of overspray here and there the way I did this one, but not a lot. So I could probably leave this and get by with the look as it is, but I think I'm going to go ahead and trim that edge off since the blue only goes out to that far. I'm going to go ahead and trim that off, and I'm going to put it on another background. This is a piece of paper from Studio Calico, just one I bought individually because I liked the pattern. I've had it quite a while, haven't used it, but I think it will look good going along with this paper. The sketch I'm using comes out of my sketchbook, and it's page 11, where I have, in this case, a single photo up here. I'm going to have several photos in mine, but they're not going to take up a lot of room. So up here in the upper right-hand corner, and then, and you know, you can flip it around anyway, but I'm going to stick with this approach with the upper right-hand corner, and then have a little bit of embellishment, and my title down here in the lower left-hand corner, and some journaling. So for the title for this, I'm going to be die cutting some letters, and I wanted it to look on the letters like this sand was flowing down through them like it does on this. So I took some cardstock, and I had this embossing powder that I found the other day when I was cleaning up. I haven't used it a whole lot. It's the first embossing powder I ever bought, and it's different than most embossing powders. This is a distress embossing powder, so it has a texture to it. And it wasn't probably the best one to buy as your first embossing powder because it doesn't really show you what the embossed look can be when you get a smooth kind of surface with embossing powder. But for projects like this, it's great because it's going to have that sandy kind of texture, and if you could feel it, you could tell it's rough. It almost creates like a sandpaper type of look, and that's what I want on the letters that I'm going to be cutting out. So I'm going to be cutting them out and using some of this distress powder. I just haven't decided for sure on the color whether I'm going to use a rust, probably needs to be a lighter one than that, or some other color. I do have some wood grains that I thought would also look good with this, since the photos have some wood look to them, so I have a few choices of wood grain that to combine here. I don't need a lot of paper. This sketch shows just very little, and I think I used washi tape when I did this originally, so I might use some washi there also. So I don't need a lot of stuff for this page. The background with all this stenciling and stuff is really, and the photos I think really bring your attention to what they need to be focused on. So anyway, that's my page products, and I'm ready to get started. Right, I have my sides trimmed down there, and I've cut out some words. I cut them out. I tried the orange first, and I decided that I would really rather have them in a teal color because I think that's what's going to look good with that weathered wood distress ink. I'm going to go ahead and put my background together here. And I'm just leaving this so that the bluish background paper shows only on the top and the right side. Taking my Cricut die cut letters, these were cut with the Plant and Schoolbook cartridge. Using the weathered wood distress ink, just sprinkling that over the top. And what I'm doing with my fingers here is just brushing the top of it a little bit so that there's not a solid coating of distress ink between the top that doesn't have anything and the bottom. I want it to look like the sand is sort of falling down on the letter, if that makes sense. And the S looks pretty good. And there is that texture there. It's kind of a sandpapery type texture. Let's do one other letter on camera, the A. Tweezers are really, really helpful for this. I brushed a little bit of that off with my finger, and then I dropped it again. I'm going to heat that up. What I found with this letter A is that I had too much of a dividing line there. It was too obvious. So I went back and I added, once you've embossed, you can't take that off, but you can always add a little bit more. So I added just a little bit more and made sure that it was just a little bit of the embossing powder. And then the A looks better. Now I could not find any trim or washi that I liked, but I did have this old piece of chipboard. It's a border piece. I have painted it with gesso, and I'm going to use some different mists to add color to it. I'm starting with, I can't remember, this is a Studio Calico mist. I'll have to put the name on the screen. It's one of the older ones. I don't have a lot of it left. I've had it a long time, but it's an aqua green, but it has a little more of a brownish tone to it. It's not real bright. And now I'm using the Honor Society color, which is one of the colors that was on the background of this page. So I know it's going to match. And I'm just blending all these together and using the heat gun to heat it some as I go along. This did take quite a bit of time to dry. Even with the heat gun, I had to leave it for a while because it stayed tacky. But I love the sort of muted look that you get. It's the same kind of thing you get with watercolors, except I thought I'd try it with mists, and it works really well. It helps from some of the mists to add a little bit of water to them. This last one is the Heidi Swap Mint color that will give it some glisten. I add a little bit more of that green mist from Studio Calico there, so it's not quite too bright. Kind of getting an idea of how it's going to look. It's a little bit bright. I'm going to deal with that a little more later on in the video. And I'm taking some scrap paper that I had been using to collect excess mist and mopping up some of the extra there. I'll have that for another project. When it comes to picking the wood grain, I had two that were just a toss-up. So I chose the one that had already been cut up. My journaling is printed on white cardstock, and that's pretty stark. So I've got some, I believe I used tea dye ink there. I'm going to go around the edges with the tea dye. I thought it might be too light, but as it turns out, it's plenty bright enough or dark enough for this journaling, and the top is going to get covered up. So I put the letters on the wood grain, and they're not showing up as much as I wanted them to. So I went back and cut another set the same size with a light gray cardstock. This is a smoky slate cardstock from Stampin' Up. And that's going to give me a shadow that will help them really pop out. I'm distressing the edge with a distressing tool. This is a Stampin' Up tool, but I know that Tim Holtz makes one of these. And it just roughs up the edge of paper. When it's designer paper, though, you're going to see the white core. So I'm adding some vintage photo ink to the edges, and I'll do all four sides of this, but I just do a couple of them on camera. I have this trim that came from Hobby Lobby originally I'm playing with, and you'll see me work with that for a long time. I did feel like my inked chipboard piece there was a little too bright, and I tried a few ink colors. The one that worked the best was the distress ink, because it, the vintage photo distress ink, because it adds some brown to it and it tones down the brighter shades of blue that I ended up with on this piece. Okay, starting to glue some things in place. I popped up those photos of the sand art piece there on the top. They were kind of dimensional anyway. I'm going to take this chipboard piece and cut it not quite in half, but so that I have enough down there at the bottom, and then I'll end up splitting it so that it will fit up there at the top and look like it goes all the way across. And I'm back to my orange trim that I got on sale at Hobby Lobby back in the craft department. I'm looking at lots of different places to use it. I'm also considering some brads because I want something masculine and just real simple. I have those wood dots from My Mind's Eye. Those don't end up working out. What works out the best are these brads from Stampin' Up. I looked at my Mind's Eye brads, but I have these from Stampin' Up. They're either vintage or antique. I can never remember what they're called, but they're the only thing like it in the Stampin' Up catalog. This is about my 4th order with them. No kidding. I have had these. I just keep buying and buying and buying them, and I've used them on all kinds of projects. They just go with everything. Now, I did decide that that orange trim could be cut into little pieces, so that's a possibility as well. We have our page pretty much done, or maybe completely done. This is where I need your help. I have it with the stenciled background, got my photos, my journaling, my title, which I really like with the sand dripping down there, got my date on there, a couple of small embellishments, and this really fits the sketch with the, the stenciling, photos on the right, a couple of embellishments, title, journaling, everything's, where it needs to be. The only thing I can't decide is whether I need these little, crystal-y things that came out of this trim. Sequins, that's what they're called. Sequins and beads is what they are. And I've got, kind of placed them around here at different places, and I can adjust them different places. But I want to know, do you like it better with the little orange pop of color there, or do you like it better without? So I'm asking you, because I can't decide. So I'll let you, if you want to, leave me a comment and tell me whether you think that it looks better with the little orange pieces or without. So I'm going to do a little close-up here with the orange pieces laid on. And now I'm going to take them back off again. And kind of close up without. So I could go either way. I just haven't quite decided. So I'm just going to lay these aside on my work table and the trim if I want any more of them. And so give me your thoughts. I would appreciate it. Now this page used a lot of cardstock. For the background paper, stenciled the cardstock that I showed in that other video, of course for the journaling, but also for these letters, cutting them with the Cricut and then using the embossing powder. I teach several ways of using your die cut letters and doing different things with them to make them more interesting in my creative cardstock class. So if you have a lot of cardstock and you want to use it in some new and unique ways, I hope you'll consider that class. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing your comments and seeing whether you think I need to put the little orange pieces on there or not.